flyer for Garage Party. We have here, this is from Balboa High. Bal is in South San Francisco. Oh, sorry, not the city, but in the southern part of San Francisco, the Excelsior District. The Octagon Club there was a major sponsor for a lot of parties and school parties, hall parties at the time. This is from a 1984 party that was billed as a battle of the DJs between Unique Musique and Unlimited Sounds, both of whom were Daly City crews. Unlimited Sounds is the crew that DJ Apollo originally came out of. Another high school party. This one was at a Catholic high school, if I'm not mistaken. In fact, it says here at the bottom, open to all Catholic school people. Outsiders welcome only with Catholic school days. You had to roll with a Catholic person. All right. And this was a battle between Unique Musique and Futuristic Sounds. We have here, this is another high school party sponsored by Bal's Octagon Club. This is two different crews, Unique Musique and Unlimited Sounds, except this time, instead of a battle, they were joined as an alliance called the Juice Crew. And alliances were basically collaborations between different crews. Rather than competing with each other, they would work together and build like really big systems, really big stage setups and whatnot. And this was held in a hall in San Francisco off of Geary Street. So this is a flyer from Imagine One. Which is a showcase, and showcases were put on by independent promoters inviting multiple crews to come and participate, whether in a battle setting or just as a performance showcase. Imagine out of San Francisco was one of the largest of the showcase series. They had at least, over the course of their lifespan, something close to maybe 20 different showcases between 1984 until about 1991 or so. And then, so they were based out of San Francisco. And then one of the other major showcases was based out of Union City, Fremont. That was AA Productions. I'm sure maybe Robin was at some of these parties back in the day. So another showcase party. Again, if you notice, you have multiple crews being represented here. So you have Bumpin' Sounds, which were out of San Jose. Ultimate Creations was a San Francisco crew, and so forth and so on. Just want to give a quick shout out to MC Fly Productions, Brian Sampson, who some of you probably know. He's been down in LA now for decades. But Brian was just a huge promoter in the Stockton area. If my friend and colleague Dawn DeBon was here, she could probably tell stories about that. And he put on a lot of different parties in the Stockton area, and oftentimes met people from San Francisco, Daly City, East Bay, South Bay crews to come out to Stockton to participate. This was back in 1984. You can tell from the design of the flyer. And this is really a cool thing I came across in the stuff that Henry Geronimo sent. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, out in Lodi, had a party that they invited Unique Musique to DJ, and along with the contract, they sent in a request list. So if you want to know what people were listening to back in 1986, here is a few of the sounds that they were bumping or wanted to hear bumped. So a lot of freestyle, a lot of new wave, a little bit of hip hop in terms of LA Dream Team, whether you consider that hip hop or not. So variety, you can kind of get a sense of what was popping off in the mid 1980s. And that'll do. I'll switch over to Sean's presentation.
Thank you. I just want to start off by saying, honored to be here on a panel with such luminaries that I've known about, respected, admired for a long time. I'm very much the undercard here, so I'm going to make this brief so we can get you on to the good stuff. So all I wanted to do today was, my research, as Jeff said, is on Filipino participation in 1980s and 90s LA hip-hop. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of context and hopefully add to the discussion that Jeff started with his keynote. So just real quickly, as you know, the LA Filipino population is pretty concentrated in a couple of different pockets, primarily what I'm calling the South Bay, which is a whole other discussion about whether to label it that. But Carson, Cerritos, Long Beach, that cluster, up in what's now known as historic Filipino town of the Mid-City area, West Covina, and then obviously other pockets. So the South Bay, I think, at least as for those people in the outside of the region that know about Filipinos and hip-hop, the South Bay is usually probably one of the first places you hear about. Obviously, from the Beat Junkies, from Cabo Modern, from even graffiti crews like NASA, all have their roots in this area. And I don't think that's a coincidence, right? You have a community of kind of a concentration of like-minded folks in a relatively small area that's going to help breed innovation. So one thing I want to highlight here is the South Bay scene, in terms of what we've been talking about in the construction of local knowledges. I think this is a space of construction, right? In a very literal sense, right? So where networks are built from the ground up, contributing to the knowledge that's passed down from uncles, aunts, friends, what have you. But yeah, this is a place of kind of building networks, building promotion networks, an audience network that's going to follow these folks around as they move beyond the scene. Yeah, and obviously it's in these spaces of familiarity, right? You're seeing the same folks every weekend, every couple weekends. That breeds that competition, right? You have the concentration of folks that are always kind of battling, right? Wanting to improve on the dancer's move that you saw last night. For graffiti writers even, right? Wanting to make a bigger and better flyer that's going to catch people's attention. For DJs, obviously, wanting to get a larger audience. But it's in these kind of intimate spaces of competition where I think that local knowledge is created and then is initially disseminated. And also, I think this is obviously where you get brand recognition, right? Folks make their name so when they move outside that initial scene, they have somewhat of a following. Something that's came up in a lot of the interviews I've done is this idea of the South Bay as kind of a bubble, right? That it's this concentration, this intense concentration of talented folks, right? And it becomes almost self-nurturing, right? Everything you need to kind of keep that scene going is there. So what's interesting to me is a lot of the folks I interviewed from the scene actually don't, or at least the way they tell me, is they don't go out to the larger LA scene, right? So most of them aren't going to places like the Good Life Cafe or Project Blowed later on, or even to the Belmont Tunnel for graffiti, right? That it's concentrated there because everything you need is there. So when we talked about this over email, we had this idea of an imaginary, right? The idea that folks perceive themselves as belonging to a larger community. So I think in this sense, the South Bay has its own kind of sense of imaginary, its own sense of community. So I think of the house parties, I think of as institutions, right? They're institutions that help construct these networks. A second institution, jumping into the historic Filipino town area, in this case is a literal institution, the Search to Involve Filipino Americans, or SIPA. This has come up a bunch of times in my research as well, and I think of this as a hub space, right? A hub is in this sense, as a central space that's kind of attracting a variety of folks to it. As a community space, obviously it's attracting a lot of different kind of folks, right? You have folks that were, college folks that are coming to volunteer there. Folks from the community that are going to after-school programs or that are going to cultural events there. So it attracts a variety of people. And I think what's important here is it's a physical space, right? SIPA is a physical place. It's a building that's rooted in the community that has some sense of permanence, which, especially for nonprofits, is relatively rare. But it's important. It's always there. It's a space that people can kind of cycle in and out of. But I think once they're there, people both are exposed to and experiment with hip-hop culture, right? So the folks that are coming from UCLA Samahang are bringing their kind of knowledge of those other scenes that they were experiencing and bringing it to this community space. The kind of around-the-way people that are going to the after-school programs there are going there to both be exposed to the shows that organizers are throwing from outside organizations, but then a lot of folks are just going there kind of after school and kind of hooking up with other people to learn how to dance, how to DJ and stuff like that. So it's a space that attracts people that allows those kind of networks to expand. I had here expanded imaginary. The idea that, again, that imaginary of who we belong to is, I think, expanding in these kind of spaces, right? You're layering on kind of different things, the knowledge of maybe even a different kind of Filipino identity that you would have than you would have in some of these other scenes. So we have kind of a space of construction in the house party scenes. I think of these institutions like SIPA as a hub that brings people together, that allows that kind of scene to kind of grow in different ways. And then last, just to bring it back to UCI, we have the college scene. So the university thing, I think, of something as NASA group, right? As a scene of expansion. Right, so all those folks that got their start in the South Bay, kind of doing that house party scene, when they're coming to the university, right, they're bringing those networks with them, right? Those existing networks that they've developed over years with their peers. But obviously, at the university, they're allowed to expand those networks, right? They're getting new venues to kind of throw parties at. and there's a whole new there's new blood, there's a whole new audience that they can tap into to help expand it. So I think these university spaces allow those local knowledges to kind of travel. So if you're from the South Bay, you can talk to folks that were up in Daly City, or you can talk to folks that were up in historic Filipino town, whatever, and kind of learn what they were doing. So all those kind of rumors that I think Mark talked about, that we heard about this other crew, now you're kind of meeting those people in the flesh and kind of learning what those scenes were about. So it's this kind of organic expansion. And then obviously it's also a space of kind of new scenes, right? It's in the university spaces, meeting these new folks, where those scenes kind of expand into something new. Again, that exposure to other scenes, I think new forms of competition, again, a new concentration of kind of like-minded folks that want to promote the culture, that is allowing that local knowledge to kind of bundle up and then kind of reproduce in new ways. So yeah, I just think it's important to think about these institutions, right? The individuals make these scenes, obviously, but they tap into kind of existing things that are kind of on the ground, kind of up and running. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So on to the panel. Thank you. Can we turn this off?
Hi everyone. How's it going? Good. Okay. So my name is Mark Pulido. I'm the mayor of Cerritos. But before that, let's see here, I was a popper and a wannabe DJ. I'm going to say wannabe because Red's in the house and he's a real DJ. And Kandi and all the others. And I was a b-boy, actually b-boy for life. Since I'd say 83. And that was really at the start of forming my own identity as a person. And I'd say that kind of predates my involvement in the Filipino American community, which is near and dear to my heart. Started youth organizing in '84. So there's about 30 years of youth organizing to this day. I don't really see being mayor as Cerritos as being a politician. I see it more as an extension of my original intent. That's to organize and mobilize the young people in my community, Cerritos. So, and hip-hop has always been kind of central to all of that. Because for me, my first love was music and then movement. So that rhythmic, that movement that Jeff speaks of, and then the art, and being just a lover of art in all its forms, really made me feel alive. And any way that I could express it or share it, we didn't call it the cypher back then. We just called it hanging out, whether it was in front of Sega Center in the Cerritos Mall. There were these little planters where everyone would sit after school and kind of loiter until they kicked us out, right? Red, you remember this? But we called them the Philippine Islands. Right in between Sega Center and the United Artists Theaters in the mall, where we had friends who worked at both, right? So we were, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. This is pre-hip-hop hitting the West Coast. This is really not good.
No, just go back because it clips.
Oh, clips.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that better right there?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
So I guess I'm here to talk a little bit about the regional experience in Cerritos. And so I wanted to give you a picture of why I'm here, because it was from as a kid. And that's why I think it's important to note that hip-hop in its purest form is really about love. Love that young people who are trying to form their own identities readily embraced and continue to embrace, even to this day. My daughter's 12. She's in 6th grade, same elementary school that I'm at. And the first time that I ever publicly popped was at our 6th grade dance. Next week is my daughter's 6th grade dance. Nice. And she said, "Daddy, no parents allowed." I want to see my daughter bust out, but that's unattached. But that's really an anecdote about that. It's kind of generational what's happening in our city, in our hometown. But before I delve too much into that, I just want to give it up to Jeff, who I first met in '88. I don't even know if you remember this, but first Asian Pacific Americans in higher education. This brother was advocating for Filipinos in higher education, making sure that we don't get erased. This is pre-209, pre all of those efforts to kill affirmative action, and Jeff was an advocate. He was a leader at UC Berkeley, he was an activist, and he inspired me. This is before I knew he was deep into hip-hop. So I want to give it up to him. I want to give it up to Mark V. Mark V. He's Mark V. I remember when he hit the West Coast, coming back home, because I know you're originally from Long Beach, but out from Jacksonville to study Asian American Studies over at UCLA. And that's where he really kind of re-sparked my interest in all that I had experienced as a kid and then in the scene, because he wanted to document it. I said, you want to document this? So that kind of brought me into this whole thing. And then Rod, because he went to UH Manoa with my wife, and I met him back in the mid-'90s. I had no idea that you're going to be a part of this, but it's a beautiful thing, what you're doing in academia. And Kuttin Kandi, wow, just a fan. I'm a fan. I'm a fan. Oh my God. And my daughter's a fan. And hopefully she will follow in that strong, be nice sister tradition in hip-hop. Robin, I met at a Gabriella conference in '93. Yeah, see, I just threw that out there. 1993, UC Santa Barbara. This sister is an amazing organizer, and had no idea that she's from UC. Okay, and then Bam, I owe a lot to this man. Not only is he an incredible lyricist, MC, but he is an amazing community organizer, and he came out in my yes, my deepest time of need, when I lost 2 times for city council, trying to come back for the 3rd time, right? 3 the hard way. And he came out, brought the people, and we won it. So I sit in the seat for many reasons, because of the people that I'm up here with, and I want to give it up to Legion of Boom, Oliver Wang, for his, actually it's between Mark V, who started this discussion, and then he turned me on to your research. And I said, man, if the Bay Area could be documented, we got to document what's going on down in Southern Cali. Thank you. And so that brings us to Sean, who we got to connect, because we finally met, what was that, at the first book signing here at UC Irvine. And I may have to piggyback on one of your slides, the one of the demographics, Filipinos in LA County, 1990 census. And you saw those little circles. And if you go over the intersection of the 91 freeway and the 605 freeway, where it used to be called Dairy Valley in 1956, right? And then it got changed to the Cerritos, because that was the boonies for LA County. That was the last stop before you get into Orange County, and they decided to build homes. Okay? They decided to build homes. And in the early 1970s, Cerritos was the fastest growing city in America. The population boomed 300%. Okay? And the reason why, because folks from downtown LA, folks from Carson and Long Beach, folks from Compton, South Central, a lot of city, county, and state employees who are working in the urban core wanted to have the American dream. So they wanted to buy the first home. So they were renters once, or they're living in naval housing projects over on the west side of Long Beach. Then they moved to Cerritos. And one of the reasons why there's a lot of Filipinos, my dad was the first BLM real estate broker in LA County. Okay? My mom and dad got their start in the early 60s in P-Town, what is now called historic Filipino town. So they were involved as community organizers there, and also realtors. And my dad also worked for Caltrans. He was the bridge engineer that built the 605-91 interchange. So when it was Dairy Valley and they were changing to Cerritos, they said, you know what? We're going to stop this moving. We're going to stop moving from base to base to base, because we're a military family. And my folks said, you know, we're just going to sink our roots. And, you know, they say from S-H-I-T, from shit, something came. And when I say S-H-I-T, because if you lived in Cerritos in the early 70s, it smelled like, because it was all cows. Or was it? It was all cows. And then they moved them, they built all these homes, and slowly by slowly all the cows were replaced by people. And we could smell it every single day, and all the flies. Okay? So what was there to do in Cerritos? Come the late 70s, everyone was hitting high school, and so I want to give it up first to two brothers, twins. I'm going to put it down right here for all you documentarians, Lito and Louis Lucena. Lito and Louis Lucena, the twins, in '78 started Public Image Music. Public Image Music, okay, then an elementary school kid by the name of Raymond Belly, okay, DJ Curse, learned from the twins. Those twins went to high school, at Cerritos High School, my cousins, and they threw the baddest house jams, okay? Before the deputy sheriffs would break up the parties, they were disco, funk, R&B jams. In the backyard, the house, the garage, spilling out onto Cybrandi Avenue, just around the corner from Cerritos High. And I was an elementary school kid, and that's when I first saw popping. That's where I first heard straight mixing, not cutting, not scratching, pre-hip-hop hitting the West Coast, jams. And it was a beautiful thing. And I would just kind of equate that to when Cool Herc rolled out the big speakers into the parks. I'd say it was like probably contemporaneous. So I didn't know what I was going to experience then, but in sequence, as everything hit our little hometown, where we didn't have cars, we couldn't go anywhere else, but it was popping, breaking, DJing, raft riding, every single element. We embraced it, we organized, we came together, we crewed up, we battled. It was beautiful. And for me, it was probably the most alive I had ever felt. And even till this day, now it's like way more than 30 years later, I can remember it vividly. And that's what got me to sneak out of work today. To come here to be with you so that we can conspire to do more. I'm going to end here and answer questions later. Thank you. Woo!
I don't really have anything prepared. My experience, my name is Bambu, by the way. I came here with part of a group called The Bar. We've been doing a short run across Southern California, and I'm happy to be here. My experience is a little different. I didn't have to go discover hip-hop necessarily. It was just kind of around me. Spoke about Herbie Hancock earlier. I mean, you know, it was one of those things. My entrance into Filipino culture came from gangbang. You know, I joined a gang called Satanas, which was probably the first and biggest gang at the time. Started as a car club and became a gang. And just being a kid, you're around hip hop so much. You know, we had K-Day, we had all these, you know, and then that's when 92.3 The Beat at the time was playing hip hop, Power 106, before they became a techno station. They played a lot of hip hop. And so it was just kind of around us. You know, it wasn't something I had to go find. I didn't have to go, you know, so my experience again is very different. A lot of it started and was centralized around gangbanging, which even to this day is still my entry point into a lot of communities. So again, my experience is completely different. Culturally, it wasn't, I was Filipino because I was in a Filipino gang, and in the gang, we were still outcasted by the bigger Filipino community that was in Los Angeles. So we were a really, really small, niche community of folks. And I used rap as kind of a way to big up the neighborhood. We would go to clubs, to pool halls, and they would put me on the table, and I would just start rapping about where we were from, and my gang, and my neighborhood. And it connected me to Cerritos. My first entry into Cerritos was the fact that we had a big pocket of our gang in Cerritos. See, they dig it. And, so again, I say that to say that hip hop, for me, will always be there. But it's not something that I organize around necessarily or use as my platform. You know, because my whole thing is that if the people go away, if the people who embody hip-hop go away, then hip-hop really doesn't mean shit to me. I mean, at the end of the day, I appreciate it, and I hear a lot, when I say those kind of things, and hip-hop heads go crazy, like, what'd you say? But really, at the end of the day, I mean, now it's been appropriated to, what is hip-hop? Now we're all scratching our heads going, well, what is it? Is it the stuff you hear on the radio? Is it the stuff, you know, that the kids with the backpacks rock, and they're the only ones who are the real gatekeepers of hip-hop? So at the end of the day, I'm just like, I smash all that, and I say, you know, whatever it is you're into, alternative rock, the main goal is that the people who embody this culture of hip-hop, we're dying. we're the ones that are suffering. And hip hop was initially a tool to bring us all together. It's a black art. I never say I make Filipino hip hop. That's stupid. I make hip hop. Hip hop is a black art that has opened its arms to allow us all to just be ourselves. And we need to embrace that. You know, I feel like a lot of times we run away from that. You know, we're so scared, we just want to call it Filipino hip hop for a whole bunch of different reasons. But I think I'm here today to kind of speak on that behalf, that, you know, I use it as my entry into organizing and things like that, but at the end of the day, that's where my focus is. Hip hop just supports my want and need to organize folks so that whatever comes next, whether it be dubstep, is like the next new thing. You know, who knows? All these labels that we're given to different things all come from hip hop, and that's why I think we all scratch our heads, because I hear hip hop and dubstep. People are like, no, that's dubstep. I hear it in trance. I hear it in alternative rock today. You know, and it's kind of now it's this big thing, and we're here today still trying to grab on to like, okay, well, what is it? What is hip hop? What really is hip hop? And I think we need to let that go. I think that now it's like, okay, it's so big, it's so beautiful that everybody can take a piece of it and call it what they want. But what's happening to the people that started it, that, again, embody what hip-hop was created for? I don't have any cool slides or anything like that. But, again, I'm happy to be here, so thank you guys.
Destroy the only mic in the
Yeah.
house.
The MC drops the mic. I did that on purpose.
But it's going to go back to you. No, I think some of what you said was, maybe if you could talk a little bit more about that, Bam. You were talking about how, you know, for you, you feel like there's a lot of your experience that is different. So maybe you can, if you want to, you know, if you can, maybe speak a little bit more to that. Or what do you think is different for other people, you know, that distinguishes kind of your relationship to hip-hop, or how you came to hip-hop, or even came to, you know, being Filipino.
Yeah,
right?
hip-hop came to me, really, at the end of it. Like I said, I was around it. We'd be on the basketball courts. It would just be playing on the radio, so it was almost natural to me. It wasn't, again, something I had to go search for, necessarily. Everybody was just doing it around me. So my passion for hip-hop, it's like my passion for breathing. I don't think about it. You know, I don't think about breathing. I just do it. I don't think about putting on hip-hop clothes or anything like that. My underwear is hip-hop, you know, like because I am hip-hop, right? Like, no matter what I do, the food I eat, that's hip-hop food to me because I'm hip-hop, right? And I think that's, again, I keep going back to these labels because that's really what, at the end of the day, all we're doing is putting labels on certain things. Kuttin Kandi, no matter what she does, even when she organizes, you know, I watch her do her thing, and it's still very hip-hop, the way she commands a crowd when you're at a rally, you know, all that's all hip-hop. You know, a lot of my entrance into organizing was because of hip-hop. You know, I didn't know anything about myself, really, about being Filipino. I spoke the language only because we didn't want other gangs to know what we were saying when we were at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall in Downey, so we'd all speak Tagalog so nobody knew what we were talking about. It wasn't because I was so culturally in tune with everybody, or, you know, as a matter of fact, I didn't want to be a part of that Filipino community. It was corny to me, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to do that. My assimilation into the country was hip-hop. My parents came here, you know, and they had the American dream set out for us, and then I discovered hip-hop, which spoke to me as a person of color living in a community where we're marginalized, you know, and we're surrounded by all these other groups of color who have managed to organize in these communities where we weren't meant to survive, and we're all fighting each other. So Filipinos, what's happening in Oakland right now, the Southeast Asian community, they're being victimized. So when that happened to us in LA, we said, man, fuck that. We're not going to just let you come into our communities and fuck with us. We created gangs. And again, hip-hop just happened to orbit around that. And that's why I think that's why my experience is a little different. I'm not like a hip-hop activist, you know what I mean? I do hip-hop, I love hip-hop, I think I'm pretty good at rapping, so I just do it. But really, my focus, again, is always on organizing. Even when we get on stage, me and Gio, and that's one thing that always comes out of our mouth. It's cool if you listen to us and you're a fan, but you're not a revolutionary just because you listen to Immortal Technique or Blue Scholars. It just makes you a fan at the end of the day. It's when you take the Blue Scholars music and you say, you know what, yeah, that Yuri Kochiyama's, that's a dope song. I'm going to go and study who that is. Oh, I've studied who that is. Damn, I need to go do something about it. That's the ultimate goal, is to push you all to actually do something. We're just going to watch hip-hop go away. I promise, we're watching it now. You know, that's why there's all this activism around, oh, who's going to keep doing it? They got the Temple of Hip-Hop, they got the Zulu Nation cats. All these cats organizing around saving hip-hop. Not really my thing. That's why my experience is different. You know, like, if hip-hop goes away today, it'll suck, you know, it'll be a sad day, but if the people are eating and the people are good, then it's cool, I'll be okay with it. At the end of the day, that's the focus, you know.
I think it's interesting because, you know, this panel was set up as a panel that was supposed to be about regional knowledge and local knowledge and that kind of stuff, but it's almost like it's turned into a generational panel, intergenerational panel. What I find is interesting, right, is we started off with the folks who are basically starting up out of the house parties and the church parties and that kind of stuff, like these DJ scenes. People come together, they party, that kind of thing, and that evolves because hip-hop comes in, right? And then, so you see in your story, Mark, right, like how all of a sudden, you know, there's a new way for the kids to be able to be in this, like, formerly Cowtown, right, in this new space, right, that everybody's moving to. They basically are able to put their imprint on this new suburb. And then on the other side of town, right, you're talking about the other side of town, you got a whole other different type of thing that's kind of going on, but hip-hop's already there. So you're walking into a situation where it's been established, this is who you are, right? Like you said, I am hip-hop. Got a hip-hop beanie on, right? Hip-hop Arcana shirt on. Got a hip-hop beard on here. I say, you're hip-hop, right? And it's interesting, too, to hear you talk about, you know, we're already seeing it go in some ways. So I guess, you know, one of the things that I wanted to ask is, of all of you, is, so if the project is not necessarily just about hip-hop knowledge, right? It's not just about Filipino-American knowledge. Like, what are we ultimately using these knowledges for? We got these knowledges. We've developed them. You were born into it. What are the knowledges for? You see what I'm saying? The local knowledges, the hip-hop knowledge, Filipino-American knowledge. Like, what are our knowledges for? What are we doing this for?
That's ultimately, I think, the question. That's what I think Empire Funk is. It's like, okay, we've documented it. Now where do we move forward from here?
Okay.
Do we keep writing the same fucking book? You know what I mean? Or do we say, okay, we've got this. Let's do a volume 2. Let's do a volume 3. Let's have a conversation about where to go from this book. Why did we write it? Why are there pieces about, you know, how we organize transnationally? Why are there articles on there about folks? You know, why did we write in that book? You know, let's get it out there and just ultimately to move forward. Because if we hold this book up and we're like, yeah, this is it. This is the end all right here. Kind of defeats the purpose.
Actually, you know what? We actually supposed to get Kuttin Kandi up here because this is a West Coast heavy panel so far, and it's also kind of Pinoy heavy. So we need to have some Pinoys up in here.
Yes.